Hello, welcome to Modern Papist. Today we were going to be talking about that study that a lot of people are talking about on Twitter or X. I still call it Twitter because I'm old, but yeah, we're going to be talking about that study by Natalie Lindemann that the CNA article that's been floating around with it mentioned, and I have with me TLM Ryan with me to discuss the findings. And so that's what we're going to do. So the first thing I want to mention is with this, because I don't want to give off this impression of bias. Like, I typically go to a Novus Ordo, and correct me if I'm wrong, TLM Ryan, but you typically go to a TLM, right?
Yes, almost exclusively. However, we do have a fantastic Latin Novus Ordo in our diocese, which is ad orientem. Probably 90% of the liturgy is in Latin.
Yeah.
Communion kneeling, very traditional. If you weren't a liturgical expert, you probably, like, if you blindfolded me and put me in there, I probably wouldn't really know it was different.
Okay.
So those are my two liturgical preferences. Yeah.
Oh, cool. All right. So, because like the NO that you described, that's basically my parish.
Gotcha.
Except for ad orientem, because our archbishop decided that we can't do that anymore. So yeah, but we are going to be talking about lex credendi, lex orandi, or if you don't know, the law of prayer is the law of belief. It's a very important understanding within the church, and I think it plays out here in this study. Although I do think it's important to note that we need to be careful with what we say about this study, because I'm already seeing people overbite the claims of what is really being suggested by Natalie in this study. So we're gonna go into the CNA article right now. Let's see. Let me try to pop it up. Oh man, that is really small. So so this is done by Tessa Gervasani. So just like in most other articles that I go over, I try to give as much attention to the people who actually did it and put it together, because we are talking about it. So it says traditional liturgical experiences predict stronger belief in the real presence. And so the first thing I want to get into is, this is like a second study. There was a first study, and then there's a bigger study. And in the bigger study, there was a 57%. Yeah. So there's a belief in the real presence of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist is central to the Catholic faith, but only 50%. 57% of U.S. Catholics believe with certainty the Eucharist is Jesus' body, which is
that seems a little. Does that seem a little high to you? I've seen other reports that are like abysmal.
Right. So
I guess it depends who they're
yeah,
selecting.
yes, and let me make sure really quickly, because I think I stated something wrong. Recently published a follow-up peer review. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So 57% believe, and so if we take something like the Pew Research that says 20% of Catholics go to mass.
Yeah.
And 7% of that sample, just assuming there's appropriate parallels and all that stuff statistically, like there's 37% that aren't practicing that, right? Like there's a discrepancy in what you're stating and how you're acting, right? So that to me is like a very weird, when it comes to survey self-identified studies or self-reported studies, when you ask people a question, you get a bias. Yeah. And in this case, instead of asking something like, how often do you go to the gym? And instead of saying 3 times a week when you go to, the gym, 0 or 1 times a week, you're saying you do believe, in the real presence.
Well, it'd be like asking, like, do you believe going to the gym is important? The people who go every week are going to say, it's less important than those who go 3 times a week.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. And yeah, that's a better parallel to this question. Yeah, and that's what I think we're seeing is obviously not everybody who believes in the Eucharist being Christ like follows up with it,
Mhm.
because then you start questioning, okay, well, why aren't you practicing if you believe that?
Right.
Like, so all right, so let's go down. So the research is 860 people, which is a fine study, but it is important to understand that this is English speaking only adults. And when you look at the I'm switching over to the study directly here. English speaking only adults recruited from an online survey. So they have to have internet access. If they don't have internet access, they don't do it. Most people have internet access, so I don't really think that's a problem. What's very important here is the fact that it is English speaking. So in America, that's mixed now, right? Like politically speaking, like
Mhm.
demographics and everything. Just because of what's happened even in the last 5 years. So that's important to understand. But what reassures me with the robustness of these answers is the fact that people were paid, and there gets to be a point where when you do these surveys, you have like initial questions that if you qualify for the survey, they'll offer you the money, and then if you don't qualify for the survey, they'll just reject you. Like, for example, if there's already enough women, the women aren't going to be, they'll just be rejected.
All right, they cap
right?
it.
So I know this is like kind of boring. So I'm like, but it's important because when you say this is representative of all Catholics, it's like it's not. It's representative English speaking, those who can speak English.
In the US, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So but that doesn't mean that what's found here is wasted and it doesn't matter, because when we get into it, like what we're talking about is universal norms that that the church has done, I mean, for thousands of years, right? Like, so it's not like a new thing. Like, people were mentioning like water is wet. Like there's some aspect to that here, given what's happened. Let's see. So, okay, yeah. All right, I'm just gonna switch over here because it'll be easier to do. So what's really important here is what she did, which I actually think was a great idea. Is she applied a Likert scale to this. So she asked the question about the belief in the real presence, and she separated it 1 to 5. 1 being it's certainly a symbol. 2, it's probably a symbol. 3, not sure. 4, probably real. And 5, certainly real. And so this is in regards to transubstantiation. And so you have a Likert scale. And the reason why it's a Likert scale is because 1 to 2 is not measured in a numerical fashion. That is like normal, right? Like it's not like you're counting inches and then you can have a fraction of an inch that's equally understandable. So there is some wiggle room between 1 and 2, and it may not be as differentiated between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4. So like that's all it is. And she mentions this in the article. So it is an important note to mention. But the way I think she designed it was I think fairly well done. So we can see that certainly real is up there at 31%, and the average is at 3.1. So, which sometimes the average isn't quite. It's not going to make a lot of sense, and that's one of the reasons why the Likert scale is kind of iffy to use. Because the average is people aren't sure that it's real.
So it would mean that the average is slightly above not sure. Is that what it? Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
so,
correct me if I'm wrong, but this just looks like a decent mix in the middle, but then really strong beliefs on the edges.
Yep. So the extremes, yeah. So and that's why I think the way she did it was well done, was because she made sure that the extremes were as far apart as possible, um, and not sure was where. I mean, these three positions are the best. Certain, not sure. Certain, real. Or I'm
Right.
sorry.
You could
So
argue that 2, 3, and 4 are all the same. It's really
you could, yeah, you
so
and that's one of the reasons why the Likert scale is around, um, that's why the Likert scale is iffy. But again, I do think it points to what it's the best way to measure it, because you can't really measure belief, and that's what this is attempting to do.
Isn't the Likert scale what they use on like those personality quizzes? Where they're like, do you like going out and partying or staying home with a book? And then you're like, oh, staying home with a book. Definitely not. Maybe not.
Yep.
Not. Okay.
Yep. And it's the same thing with like political surveys. So
Right.
do you lean heavy, like far left, moderately left, lean left, not sure. So that is
Right.
also a Likert scale.
Got it. Cool.
That's a traditional 7-point Likert scale politically,
Yeah.
but that's yeah. So okay, so that's what this is. The highest is certainly real, which is reassuring. However, it's at 31%, and that's not reassuring because these are people who practice the faith. They go to church, right? Like, so these aren't people who go to Easter and Christmas. These are people who actually go on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's less encouraging.
Yeah, 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 very much so. And so what so she does a t-test, and she finds, let's see, where's the numbers that the things here. So the mean is 3.69 using that same scale for those that receive on the tongue, and on the hand it's center at not sure. So, and it's statistically significant, which is what we're looking for in terms of making sure that the difference is appropriate. And so like that's really good, because it does show and point that those who receive on the tongue typically believe in the real presence in the Eucharist, and that's, yeah, so that reinforces that. The other one, what was it? So currently received on the tongue, right? That's where that is. What? Okay, so belief about the Eucharist, and then
is that a third option? It says choice, like.
Yeah. So these are right. So these are. Let me see.
Oh,
Sorry,
I remember reading this. This was what they believe you should do.
Yes.
So and I think that was the most telling when I read it, was that the people who had a really strong belief of receiving in the hand were the least likely to believe in the real presence. So belief matched belief, rather than, oh, I'm just, a layperson in the church I go to happens to give it to me in the hand. That, I mean, I could be wrong, but I definitely think, because let's see, belief in the hand is below 3. But up above, when it wasn't asking belief, it was just asking about practice. It was, I believe, at 3 or a little higher. I could be wrong, but that's what I took from when I read the summary article, was that the belief of how you should receive was most polarizing.
Well, right, and I think that's how you stated that is yeah, because like I'm a firm, like, just as anecdotally, I'm a firm believer that if you receive on the tongue, it's a more submissive act. And
Right.
she mentions that in her conclusions, like that or I'm sorry, actually leading up to it, like in the first few pages, that receiving on the tongue is a more submissive act, and in the hand it's not submissive. It's a casual it's a casual act that we do with like literally everything that
Right.
can fit in your hand.
Yeah, nothing's
So yeah, exactly. It doesn't show anything special. Whereas like if you receive on the tongue at Mass and only at Mass is how you like receive on the tongue. Like that's the only place you receive on the tongue. Like that's going to drive home the significance of like through your action. So yeah. So
yeah, that average was like up to 4.5 almost.
Yep. It is. Where is that? There it is. Well, sorry, 1 second. I'm just trying to get the.
No worries.
Huh.
That's weird. They were talking about bells up above, but the graph.
Yeah. The graph doesn't fit what we're looking at.
Maybe it's above.
Yeah.
There you go. 4.32.
Right, yep, that is 4.32.
That's pretty high. I mean,
that is very high. Because that's very high. You could almost account for the fact that people like you could imagine a lot of scenarios where the 4 point like the bringing down maybe people who are converting in, like because like there is a type of minority majority effect between the two, right? Like though like there's a concentration in the TLM and the and more traditional parishes, like for example, like my parish is focused, like people recommend our parish in a way that is, I don't want to say like is surprising now. It's not surprising now, but it was, because we do more traditional practices in the NO. But like the vast majority of them being, the average NO, you kind of have this effect of everybody's in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you get a higher concentration in the trad parishes or conservative parishes.
Right.
I think just because like that's the way the church has been since the 70s. Whereas if you were to go back into the 50s, everything would be different. Well, unfortunately, we don't have that data, but you could presume it would be different because the norm would be kneeling on the tongue, etc. So you probably wouldn't get a 4.32 back in the 50s. I don't know though. I mean, maybe you would. Maybe that gets into like larger debates of like, was everything rosy before the council or not? Most people say not. I don't think at any point with fallible humans you were. But to your point now, like a standard Novus Ordo parish is going to have a lot more around this like 2.62 average, because that's the way things have been, and it's kind of saturated into the belief system, which is kind of what the study's showing.
Right, and like peers of ours, like people we grew up with are not practicing anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Like at a huge proportion. Yeah. So Starskim, this is you're putting it very succinctly what we were just saying. 2.62 for people who think you should use their hands versus 4.32 for should receive on the tongue. That is a huge disparity. And I believe she's doing a Tukey test, post hoc test. So she's looking in between the differences there.
So what are the implications there for that 2.62? Like I mean, I've not had conversations with these individuals, but presumably it would be I don't believe in the real presence, or I'm not sure. Or was it like probably a symbol or certainly a symbol? It's like,
so it's we'll just go up. So probably a symbol, and then
you're roughly between probably a symbol and I'm not sure. So then is the rationale in that individual's mind, well, because I'm not sure, or because I think it's probably a symbol, it would be foolish to kneel? Like even if you were, and I come from a non-denominational background. So it was all about like, do this in like it was all the remembrance of type thing.
Yeah.
But even in that scenario, it's like, why would you want to de-reverence a symbol of something holy? I mean,
well, so I do think, because I think me and you have an understanding of reverence that is more in line with what has always been the case, and the
Yeah.
understanding of reverence to a random person that's a Catholic, I mean, they're heavily influenced by modernism and
Yeah.
postmodernism. And
Yeah.
so this idea of I can receive anything, it's like, I mean, you see this all the time. Well, whatever's in my heart, that's what it is.
Right.
And it's like, no, like if you're on a pogo stick receiving God, like, no, that's not okay. I don't care how reverent you think you're being internally. Your actions do not reflect that. And it's so that pogo stick should not be there. But
Right. I think it also like just comes to, and I've kind of seen this even on the conservative end when like the the metal hits the meat. Like some of the conservatives who won't like, and I don't want to get too definitional here, but
sure.
like conservative Novus Ordos who kind of don't really care about the older ways or the Latin Mass. Like that's a decent distinction between the two.
Mhm.
I find when I'm talking with those individuals that like they're more dedicated to being, I don't want to say with what's hip because that's such an old term, but like what's current, like, oh, this
Yeah.
is the way we do things now. Like, I've actually had people tell me, like, don't be a weirdo. Like, that's weird. Don't be a weirdo. Like, everyone thinks you guys are weird because you're doing things like that are 60 years out of date. And I just have to, I just got to believe that the people who fall into this 1 and 2 category, like, that's got to be something, their mindset must be like that. If their belief in this is how you must receive is that strong, and it also correlates with this isn't the real symbol, or the real presence. I don't know. It's a fascinating thing to think of, like what goes on in those people's minds. But that's some of the blowback I get, like when I'm arguing with people online, is like, don't be weird, just like get with the times type thing. And most certainly, that's kind of what happened in this reception in the hand practice, at least in America. So.
Well, right. And so like, I'm gonna just bring this up because it's relevant. Like we're talking about the reception of the tongue. So
Mhm.
my pastor and I did communion in the hand versus communion in the tongue, and how many particles were there. So I'm just
Oh.
showcasing. And there's a lot more particles. Like there was 100 receptions
Mhm.
for both. It was they weren't consecrated, but they were the same host or same bread used during the consecration. And we did 100 for each. And there's just I had a blackboard, and underneath the blackboard, you just see a whole bunch of particles all over the place, just all over the place. And my whole thing's like littered with explanation. Like this is what the catechism says.
Mhm.
This is what's allowed and why it's allowed. I do emphasize that I'm not saying you cannot receive on the hand, because I cannot supersede what the church is saying. I would get in a lot of trouble. But it is tolerated, and so and that's why we get the indult, right? And
Mhm.
so, but when you have like, okay, a bunch of particles are on the ground, you're literally walking on God in a
Right.
lot of situations, and then you have this we can receive in the hand, and then your belief is just not, I mean, it's not consistent with the practice or the faith.
Right.
Like it is consistent with the practice of what's being done, but it's not consistent with what is being recommended or what we should do given the direction of the church.
Agreed.
Uh, so yeah. So all right. So we'll just go on to the next thing. But yeah, this graph corresponds with this section, and then so let's see if there's the bells and tabernacle location. Let's see if they have bells rung at consecration. So those that have bells rung at consecration, it's about 3.5, and then it's 2.5 for never, which is pretty significant.
Yeah.
Um, but this is also we're starting to, because we've gone through a few so far. We're starting to get into the point of like confounding variables,
Are they
where
overlapping?
where like, okay, well, of course a TLM has the bells, uh, type of situation, or um, all the other practices that are
Mhm.
happening, which I don't think it's wrong what she did in being that it got published and peer reviewed, obviously that's fine. But like just statistically, when she says you cannot make this is not a causal situation, which she does at the end, it's because she's not she's not able to isolate these from everything else.
Well, you get enough liturgical scholars, they would say you could.
Well, so like you would have
to test it for the sake of testing it.
Well, right, but like because she's doing everything in isolation, like a t-test in isolation, she's not like really what you should do is something similar to like a linear linear. I don't know why I said it that way. Linear. Oh my gosh. Like either a logistic regression model or a linear regression model. So that's really what would help with this, although it's going to take a lot more participants given all the different covariates that she has.
Yeah.
So but that doesn't mean, again, this is worthless. It's not worthless. And it's not something that you can just simply dismiss. And I think a lot of people that are more of the choice variety that we just talked about, that they'll try to appeal to that. And a lot of people will try to say, oh, well, that's my wiggle room. That's my get out of jail free card. That's my legality exception, because this study isn't perfect, right? And so like they try to make perfection the gatekeeper, like the perfection of a study, the gatekeeper of everything, as opposed to just using common sense. And
right.
So
like if the bells are rung at consecration and not every single person in that parish is a living saint, oh well, I guess we can go back to not ringing bells.
Exactly. No, that's exactly it. Like where you have those people who are like, well, he receives on the tongue, but he doesn't really believe. And it's like, okay, like he's a minority.
Yeah.
Like he's not the majority, like in like the average Novus Ordo.
Yeah. I mean, we need all the help we can get. Like if I see one variable that's slightly better than another, I mean, start stacking variables and you're gonna get better results on average. And then that does bleed into actual anecdotal things. It's real flesh and blood people.
Well, exactly. Because and I think that's where a lot of people will, you'll hear the slogan, correlation doesn't equal causation. And that's true, but you can't have causation without correlation. Like that absolutely needs to happen. And so it's like they abuse that slogan and they'll take that little exception to because people who do not understand science will try to say, well, because I find one exception, I disprove the entire thing, which this is like science is an inductive situation. Like when you analyze things, it's inductive, and when you find an exception, you're not disproving a fact. Like you know what I mean? Like in philosophy,
yeah.
What?
You're finding
go ahead.
You're finding an exception. That's all you're doing.
Exactly, and the like you're finding the variance. That's like okay, you got a variance there.
The bell curve.
Right. Whereas with philosophy, if you put a proof up there and I find a counterexample of that proof, okay, well, I just proved your proof. Like, yeah. And so they conflate the two, and that's the problem. Let's see. Bells rung. All right. So we just did that. What else? Parish offers Latin Mass. So just like what we were saying, this isn't just the TLM, but this is parishes that we both go to, where there's generally a higher interesting. It's not less than 0.001, but that's fine. It's still statistically significant, but it's closer.
I think the bleed here, from what I read, was that if you're going to a parish that offers the TLM, and even if you're going to the Novus Ordo service, that priest is most likely to be much more traditional in how he offers the Novus Ordo, because he's also offering the Latin Mass. So that's why this gap is probably pretty small.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I believe. Yeah. And it's kind of interesting because when I was in Kalamazoo, just to bring up an anecdote of that, like the priest that I met at the traditional Latin Mass or parish that I went to the TLM first because I'd never been to a TLM before. But then I went to the Novus Ordo immediately after, like the next Sunday. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like way more reverent than what the cathedral is doing. And it was like, I mean, you're right. Like it was the same priest. So, yeah. So, all right. So impressions, positive. Okay. So these sample sizes are pretty small, but so this is looking at the traditional Latin Mass impressions. Sorry, I don't have the entire thing memorized. So
no, I find these comments interesting. I thought it was beautiful and caused me to be more reverent. While it was fine, I just do not like Mass that much. Okay. It's hard to concentrate and too stuffy. That's hilarious. I mean,
so if you can't, it's
I get the too stuffy comment. It will appear stuffy to people initially, because
but it's only 9.
Oh, only 9 people said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas 47 said, "I thought it was beautiful and caused me to be more reverent."
Oh, awesome. Was that 47 people or 47% or?
No, that's people. So N is always a
number.
Observation number. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
and this is out of 76.
Yep. So only 8% gave a provided comments is what it's saying.
Interesting. Okay. So yeah, you've got like well over half loved it. 20 were neutral.
But what it's showing here down in the numbers is their viewpoint on the TLM, and the more positive the view, the higher the belief. 3.7, you're neutral, 3.6, and negative 2.44. Oh my gosh. It's so polarizing. Like that is so polarizing because like what it does to me, and I hate this. I mean, I don't. The reality is politics plays a part, right? Like
secular,
TLM,
like secular politics, or
yes.
like.
Well, so both church and secular politics, but in America, there's a heavy crossover between the two, right? Like the more conservative parishes tend to be the more traditional parishes tend to vote Republican, and those that are more relaxed and do whatever tend to be more liberal. And so like this is kind of how it's coming across, like in terms of the like that is a very big difference to me. Just yeah. And it's there. Yeah, that's
I mean, is that surprising? I mean, maybe the polarization's semi-surprising, but the end results to me are not surprising.
Yeah, like thinking through it because when you apply a measure like this to it and you start to see something that isn't just, well, they probably do this, they probably do that, but you see an actual number showing the disparity.
Yeah.
Like to me, that really kind of sends the point home, as opposed to just rhetoric, right? Like I'm not like, I understand rhetoric has a place, but rhetoric is strongest when it's founded on something, right? Yeah. So it's so I knew this from personal, anecdotes, but just seeing this is like, yeah, it just seems very stark to me. Let's see what else is there.
Here's your gym analysis, mass attendance.
Oh, yeah. Catholics who reported more frequent mass attendance and politically conservative views had strong real presence, belief, sex, and ethnicity did not predict Eucharistic belief. Okay, so So basically demographics didn't change.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's somewhat of a bias in the ethnicity, because if we're going to talk about like Italians and Polish people, right, that wouldn't matter as much as maybe Latin,
Yeah.
Latino, I'm sorry. And so I didn't check the question, and I know it's at the bottom, but the ethnicity question, I don't know if that looked into just Latino Catholics that spoke English, or if it did look into
All Latinos. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I was going into like Polish, Italian, like
Oh, yeah.
like a New York Italian, like Anthony,
Yeah. Like
like
actual ethnicity instead of just race
exactly.
categories, like the same
Yep.
old four. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
The problem is that ethnicity has shrunk to basically just Latino, when it
Right.
used to include Cajun, Polish, Italian, and
Yeah.
so that's a very recent phenomenon. And it's really frustrating that happens because we lose so much data.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see what else is there. All right. So she's explaining a few things here. So just a general discussion. So I do recommend, if you're interested in this, to look further with what she says, to go into the link, which is in the description. It's a very good read, and she has her citations, which I love to see. But what I wanted to get to was the causality point here, because there's a few things I want to bring up that other people have brought up, as I stated, is that she states causality cannot be determined. And specifically why is the statistical design of the experiment is not complicated enough to account for the different variables that she's looking at. That doesn't mean, again, like I said earlier, that the study is wrong. It just means you can't say the traditional Latin Mass leads to higher belief in the presence.
Is that because of chicken and egg phenomenon? Like people who believe in the real
Yep.
presence more would switch to a Latin Mass parish naturally.
Right. And so, yeah, like you have Catholics who already believe in the real presence may seek a parish whose liturgical behaviors
Right there.
better reflect the reality of the Eucharist.
Yeah.
So this is what I have a problem with. So like when a study comes out like this, and this is like, I think very profound in understanding this, not to pat myself on the back, but you basically have two options. Actually, no, you have three options. The first option is traditional practices lead to a more robust prayer life and higher belief in the Eucharist. The second option, as stated, is that Catholics who believe in the real presence will seek out liturgical behaviors that are more traditional. And then there's the third option of mixed, right? Where you have people coming in, people growing up, being impressed upon with the devotions. Someone converts. So like you have all those situations that could be there. My question when it comes to, and I would love to ask this of the bishops and the priests that can make these changes, is for those that have the highest belief on average between these two groups, why aren't we following what they're doing? Because either way, with those two options, like something's there,
Yeah.
right? And so like it's the idea that the people who have fairly high, on average, a higher belief on the Eucharist go to the traditional Latin Mass, right? Traditional Latin Mass is not, or more traditional Novus Ordo. It doesn't mean, statistically correct, right? Like the study is not saying that this is causal. However, there's very limited options on what the causality is.
Right.
It's either, what you practice is what you believe, or you just happen to prefer this. And I think a lot of people, for the sake of ideology, so there, I said it. I don't typically say make a statement like that, but because this evidence is like right here in front of us, for the sake of ideology, there's a push to, well, they just prefer it.
Mm-hmm.
But that still doesn't answer the follow-up question is, okay, well, why on average do they have a higher belief system or belief in the real presence? Like, you still have to answer that question. And saying, well, they just happen to have it is not good enough. Like, that's a BS answer. Like, I
Yeah.
don't like, I don't understand.
Well, if they really wanted to know, they would look at cradle Catholics who were raised in the Latin Mass almost exclusively.
Right.
And if one, you could see the stickiness, like the retention rates there,
Correct.
and the stickiness of the belief in the real presence. I don't know of a study out there that does that. You would probably get it in the SSPX because the SSPX would probably be the best gold mine of resources for this type of data because they've been around the longest because they kind of started it all after the council, right? So like the FSSP Institute, they came along a little bit later, so they don't have like there's some SSPX Catholics that are like 3 generations in, like third generation.
Well, so right. Like, I agree in terms of understanding that the problem, the only issue, if you're going to do it statistically, is how do you account for survival bias?
Yeah.
Like because like, I think that would be a very interesting thing with SSPX, because I think in terms of the TLM, you're right. Like, I think they have the longest longevity.
Like cradle Catholic population.
Yes, they have. Yeah, they have the cradle Catholics with TLM.
Cradle TLM.
Right, and the diocesan, like, for example, before we got reduced to 4 TLMs in the Archdiocese of Detroit, we had about 23 or 24 TLMs. About 10% of our parishes had TLMs.
Yeah,
but they started in when Pope Benedict gave the okay. So in less than 20 years, 10% of our parishes had TLMs.
Yeah.
Which is an amazing growth.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, it's not going to have, we're just now hitting
one
first generation.
Yeah.
And the amount of study for that would be very limited.
The good news is that, you know, we get all the bad news about the parish closures, and, you know, my sympathies to you in Detroit. That's like, I believe, the second worst situation, maybe outside of Charlotte. Most dioceses haven't gone that far, which is good. Like, we hear the bad stories. Like, even in Chicago with Supich, they just confined it to like one parish and then reduce that parish. Like, they had to say the Novus Ordo like once a month, right? So 3/4 of your time. But then, like, the thing is, it was typically in like large cities like Chicago, DC. Because there's such large cities, the geographical stretch of the diocese boundaries are small. So I have family in Chicago. I can easily find a Latin Mass in the outer burbs because those bishops haven't done that. So I say that because we may get, in another 20 years, 2 generations of cradle TLMers that, you know, aren't SSPX. Now, I don't know if that would change on the survival bias, but we're going to have more sample data, which would be
right. Because the problem, because the problem is with TLM and even like traditional Novus Ordos. Like, traditional Novus Ordos are a very recent thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're not something that like, they're getting more notoriety. They're coming more and more with the new priests that are being ordained, because the ordination of the priesthood, as I've discussed on other videos, are more and more conservative or orthodox. And those are what the study actually says: conservative, orthodox, and then liberal. And like, so And so with that, you're going to get a lot more traditional practices coming up. Like my priest, for example, more traditional. Like he took a boomer parish, and like over 5 years,
Yep.
we have altar rails and incense and all the things you described earlier. And so I think it's very important that we understand what we have access to. It's kind of like the altar boy situation, right? Like we don't know all the people who have been altar boys and then how many of them became priests. We just know what priests used to be altar boys.
Right.
And so you only have so much of that data
Yeah.
to really finagle with, which is really unfortunate. But in both situations, with the altar boys and with traditional practices, the church knows through tradition, like, and it's weird because you're citing it's somewhat circular, but that's also why it's like silly. It's like, I'm human because I know I'm human, and I'm a human who's recognizing I'm human, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like tradition's going to recognize that tradition is the best thing
Mhm.
for the belief. And so like, just like with altar boys, we don't need to get to the point to like scientifically like resorting to perfect studies to prove what we already know from tradition. Like that's one of the
Right.
points of tradition, is to retain that information.
Well, it's kind of funny, like if you were to talk to an atheist sociologist
Hmm.
and you ask them about the success of Catholicism
Hmm.
or Christianity, and I've watched some of these podcasts, like it's very interesting. Um, they'll generally resort to, well, they just like hit on just the right this, just the right that, kind of concoction of things that humans are missing in their lives and, whatnot.
Right.
Um, and it kind of seems like that's what, I guess, what the modernist liturgical bend in the church is kind of presuming that, like, well, they just, tradition kind of just hit on some things, right? Like, there's no divine behind it because there was no like scientific method back then. They weren't like, the apostles were not like, oh, let's run a test over here in, Peter's diocese, and then, oh, let's check out what Paul's doing. There wasn't any of that. So then, like, how does the atheist explain that? They're like, well, we just, they got lucky. They struck. Yeah, like primordial soup, lightning struck. Um, whereas in reality, particularly those of us who are practicing Catholics, like this was a divine
Yep.
thing. And so I think when you're on the more of the modernist bend, I think they think a little bit like that. And I mean, you see that in the Vatican II documents and in the liturgical movement beforehand. There was this obsession that modern man had changed. So we needed to kind of like update everything to meet the needs of modern man. And to your point, it's like, well, now we've got two models, if you will. I know there's other rites and all that, but like
Yeah.
in the Western Roman Rite, we've got like two models now. With it, I don't know, like how many generations have passed since 1970? Four, at least four. Like who would be cradle, right? Because
90. Let's see. 90. 10. No, it'd be 2.5, 3.
three.
Because the
Okay,
generation's 20 years.
okay, 20 years.
So
Yes, you've got three generations now. Um, I mean, to your point, Ryan, it's like we have proof here now, finally, but we kind
yeah.
of knew it all along as well, like from
Yep.
history. Like that's the thing. I guess I wasn't making the point very well about like how the atheists explain Christianity, but you could say the same thing in a pre-conciliar mode. Is
Hmm.
like, how do we become so successful? And I know the church had kind of declined, particularly in like a temporal state. Like the papal states weren't there anymore, and
Yeah.
that was unfortunate and things like that. And our excommunications didn't mean as much as they used to, but boy, was it still pretty powerful.
Yep.
And it's almost as if the church itself viewed it as a happy accident rather than, and distrusted the way it got to where it was.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I think when people point to like altar girls, I
Hmm.
think that's like a great example where, well, it's not really going to matter if we put girls in, because girls and boys, like, they're just young and they can do it. Not knowing that, in a, you know, I that the altar boy position is a space for boys,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, psychology, and this is a psychological study that we just went through. And she explains it. She goes into the detail of some of the social mechanisms, and but the excuse me, um, this idea that when you bring a girl into an altar boy space, right, like, it's going to create a dynamic of, okay, now the boys have to compete against each other for that girl, right?
Hmm.
If they're especially if they're in puberty, or going through that, and then they're also trying to get the attention of the girl herself, like, even if it's just as a playmate, not as a,
It's just
there's no sexual attraction.
it's different. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, I golf every Sunday and it's all guys. I couldn't even imagine if someone like invited a woman into the golf space, how the not from like a dating like standpoint, but from
right,
a like filter on your conversation and the types of topics you're going to talk about. Not like we're talking about like the weirdest stuff or anything, but there's
right.
just an understanding there that this is a guy's space. We know the rules basically. Okay.
Yep.
Then you add in, I mean, it would be the same if like these are grown men. If you brought in like children, it would also change the dynamic too, right? Like
Right.
adult spaces are for adult spaces, male spaces are for male spaces, women's spaces are for women's spaces. I mean, you talk to women, they'll say the same thing if they're in an all female organization and then you introduce a man into the group, it changes the dynamic. It naturally does.
Yeah, and like, the idea of, because altar boys used to be a minor order, and the reason why I'm focusing on the the altar boys with this is because I think that represents the same mechanisms that you were talking about.
Mm,
Just this idea of, well, we kind of got it right, but we're going to try this because it seems convenient, or we can deal with it, or there's buffer,
it's
or,
with the time.
I don't know the entire mind of
Yeah.
the those that enacted these dis these processes, because, like, these are processes that can be changed. Like, these are disciplines, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
if we can change to the Novus Ordo in the practices, well, we can change back to the TLM, right? Like, why can't we? If we, so um it's not like we're stuck with a rudder that can't move
Hmm.
in the ocean. We can absolutely move it. We can fix it. And that's what gets me, is that we keep getting this evidence of, we're going the wrong way. We're going the wrong way. We're losing members. We're about to. I know for a fact that we're going to be losing parishes in Detroit, like, soon. Not because anyone's told me, but because the numbers aren't there,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of parishes that are in the red as opposed to the black. And so, because we don't have enough people going in Sunday, they may claim to be Catholic, but they don't actually go.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, it's just like sports organizations. I think it's the NHL derives the most revenue from ass and seat. That's kind of your so like, and that drives the way the league, advertises. And
yeah,
look, like if your butt isn't in the seat, you're not tithing.
yep,
Maybe again, there would be an exception. Someone wants
right,
to be a do-gooder and they have weird charitable desires to give to a place they don't go to. I'm sure you can find a few.
yeah.
But in general, if you're not going to a parish pretty regularly, you're not going to tithe. And then who pays the bills?
Well, that's the other thing, is there's, you get into the diocese and archdiocese, excuse me, uh, transparency with money.
Mm,
Like, if you're using that money for things that are absolutely Catholic, then why can't we see what's happening with it, right? Like, why is it behind a wall? Like, why do we have to give you the benefit of the doubt when, like, time and time again, like that's just not working out.
Right.
Like that, and it sucks to say that, but it's like I grew up during the like I was in middle school when the sexual
Yeah.
stuff came out from Boston, and you know, basically my entire life as an adult Catholic being confirmed, I've had to deal with that, like
Yeah.
just this lack of transparency, you know, like in when it comes to the sacraments, and then also growing up and finding, okay, well, there's a similar problem with the money, and it's just like, okay, well, why is that? Like, why do we have these huge problems? Um and then it goes back to the modernism and the tendencies, like traditional priests aren't always the best, but generally speaking tend to be better than their
Liberal peers. Yeah.
liberal counterparts. And the same thing with bishops. I don't have a study to show that, but those that get caught for uh, money problems, gosh, I'm missing the term right now, but they tend to be more liberal.
Yeah.
And so it's not to say it doesn't happen on the traditional side. It does. It tends to be more liberal. And so like it's like I know we're like jumping all over the place, but it's because it's like all connected. This entire problem is connected, and
Right.
it points back to the liturgy. Like if you don't respect God at the liturgy, which is the most sacred time, then how do you go out and walk in the way that you're supposed to? Right. And that
Right.
goes for the laity and the clergy.
Well, that kind of connects to the study is what, you know,
Yep.
we've clearly shown that like this works. Like we all kind of knew that, but like now we've got even more evidence. So what will the hierarchy do? Or why, you know, to your point, like if they've seen that the ship is going in the wrong direction, why won't they change course? And I've, you know, that was actually when I went on Avoiding Babylon and I was showing like how terrible the demographics are. Like to your point, we're going to see parish closures because the retention rate in the new mass is so bad that people just leave and take their money with them. So like, why can't, you know, like to Bishop Barron's credit, he has seen this. He like there, you don't have to argue with Bishop Barron to know that there's a crisis in the church. People will argue with him on his solutions, but you don't have to argue with him that, like, to your point, we've been going in the wrong direction. But with most bishops, I mean, you don't even hear from them, quite frankly. Like, I'm kind of shocked right now with the whole Supich thing that like some bishops are speaking out, but like I've never heard of these bishops before.
Well, and the fact that he's going at odds with it, like this study comes out right after Supich just stated what he did about tradition being aristocratic.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, oh my gosh, dude, like.
Well, you know, it's funny, and this is where it takes a dark turn. So I have a lot of non-Catholic friends, you know, all spectrums, agnostic, like, I don't know, I just don't really think about religion types, Protestant types, etc. There've been all, you know, my wife is agnostic. All of my in-laws are generally, but they definitely know, like, okay, Ryan's like this Latin Mass guy. And boy, a lot of people get fascinated by it. I've taken almost all of my friends and family have been to like several Latin masses. My in-laws think it's like, they literally, like, we've gone to Novus Ordos just because of scheduling purposes, and they'll be like, okay, like, can we go back to the Latin one next time? That's way cooler. So they know about this, and they do, like, you know, regardless of like what news site you're on or however little news content you're going to consume, Pope Francis made huge headlines when he restricted the Latin Mass. So I say that all that to say that like people on the outside ask me, what is the Catholic Church doing? And they get even more weirded out when I tell them. I ask them this question. I say, okay, what would you think the age demographic would be for an ancient medieval style mass? Old or young? I'd be like, old. I'm like, what if I told you that the new updated version had all the old people and the old medieval version? I mean, I just say medieval. I know it's older than medieval, but
Right.
That's what they associate it from movies. I say, the medieval one has like an average age of like 35. Like,
Yeah.
whoa. And I said, and it's the only thing that's growing. The only thing that's growing in the Catholic Church. And they
Yep.
say, whoa. I say, and it's the only thing that the Catholic Church hierarchy is trying to actively suppress. And they all say this. Why would anybody do that?
Right.
And that question is pretty haunting when you have to sit with it, because then you have to start asking questions about the motives of the hierarchy. And
Well,
that's
right.
and that gets pretty dark pretty fast,
Yep.
because the best answer is they're ignorant, which, one, you shouldn't be ignorant on what's working in the Catholic Church if you're a leader in the Catholic Church. I don't think it's ignorance, Ryan. Like, I think what you're showing me, if you sat it in front of all the bishops of the world, I think you'd get, like, Bishop Barron would try to get people to change. I think you get some of the good ones and some of the cardinals who have been sounding the alarm. I mean, they don't need the studies. They're still sounding the alarm.
Yep.
They would clearly point to the study and say, see, I told you so. And I don't know, I'm making a number up, but 80-85% would be either neutral on it and not care, or actively dislike these results. I've become quite cynical on that, simply because you watch enough people. I mean, you can do this in secular politics too, but I don't listen to what they say. I watch what they do.
Well, right, because there's a words are cheap.
And
Words
we
are
were, I mean, look, we were warned about this by several Marian apparitions about an apostasy from the top, and kind of
and
an internal battle at this point.
and what is it? There's friend Catholic Comedy has stated, well, God gave us, like, showed us, like, the distribution of belief with the apostles when it came to how they acted in a time of crisis. You know, 1 out of the 12 betrayed him. 1 out of the 12 followed him to the end, and then the rest just ran.
Dude, that's really good. Like, that's exactly what I would kind of break down all the bishops.
Because like I'm looking at, like, Archbishop Carleone, and he's like, hey, if you're a music minister, if you're a priest, get a hold of me. I want to talk about how we can introduce more reverence into the mass and more beautiful music. And I'm like, gosh, like, we need that on the entire United States.
Every bishop, yeah.
Yeah, like, everybody needs to do that, because that is what that's what needs to happen. Or, like, you have something like a little bit more mundane but still important, is you had the music committee from the USCCB come and say, all right, so here are these songs that are utterly problematic with our belief system, but they're said everywhere. And it's like, we know from things like the Arian heresy that Arianism was spread pretty prominently from hymns. Like, Arian was a very good hymn writer, and that's not the only way that happens, but I mean, when you get a catchy tune and you
Right.
Promote it, it spreads. And so, there's several songs that are problematic. They can be adjusted. They can, I may not like the tune, right? Like, I may have a personal preference I don't like, but in terms of, like, the actual content of what's in there, that can be adjusted, but it's not being adjusted. And the one bishop who banned it, who followed up with it and being like, yeah, these are just not going to happen in my diocese, overturned it like 2 weeks later because of all the backlash. And it's like, dude, like,
it's so funny when it comes to things like that. If you get backlash, like, I don't understand why. Like, I like it when they cave to what I want. Like,
right.
with what Cracker Barrel, like, I like that. But I never understand on my side of things. Like, just wait these people out. They will literally get tired and find something else to get angry about in a month.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, if people are gonna leave a parish over a hymn, I mean, and that's where it goes to, is like, are the bishops caring more about getting the quick money right now, or are they caring about people? I mean, you're gonna have to take your lumps if you want longer term and better results. Yeah, you're gonna have to take your lumps, because, quite honestly, if you're not actively pushing to improve your diocese will auto-destruct on its own. when
Correct.
they start closing.
Right, because you're still dealing with the human condition. Like you're still dealing with people, and America is just got a whole bunch of distractions. Like,
And we're arguably one of the healthier places for Catholicism. Like that's how sad. People have no idea how bad Latin America is. Like I know
yeah,
this only like I think the study would have been way worse if it included like either non-English speaking
Spanish.
Americans or like if it went
Yeah.
down into Latin America. I mean, quite honestly, Latin America is going to become a competition between like weird Protestants and the SSPX at the end of the day. That's all going to be left. It's
right,
so,
and right, because we have and part of it is because of the dumbing down on the liturgy, right? Not the dumbing down. Okay, I'm not. That's not a terrible way of saying it, but it's the
you want to offend me, man.
well, yes, but it's the watering down of the liturgy, where it now looks like the Pentecostals, right? So now it's a matter of if someone's not catechized well. Well, I prefer the people at the Pentecostals. Why do I want to stay at the Catholic Church?
Right.
And it looks just like us. Like we have the same things going on. And so it's like I'm gonna go over there. And so, that's been happening here in America. But like it's more prone in Latin America now. Like it's like they're dealing with it now. And they're like 20 years behind or something. And because they also have sexual abuse crisis that happen there too. So you have this.
Yeah, and they've got the weird problem of the association with colonialism with the Catholic Church, whereas we do not. I'm not saying that's a justified critique, but that is very like they threw off the Spanish Empire, and then the communist ideology is about, well, you've got to get rid of all the vestiges of the Spanish Empire, and that's the reason why you're still like in poverty. It's like, no, it's not. It's actually navigable waterways, but that doesn't sell votes. And like they just, whereas Catholics in America, like we're still kind of the rebels, like we were always kind of persecuted or at least looked down upon. So like we've got, it's kind of fun to be on that rebel side, right? So, but in Latin America, that fun rebel side does not come out through the Catholic Church. They are like were like the institution of the empire,
Right.
So they've got that problem.
Well, right. And what is it? Yeah. Mexico and Brazil, like 100 years ago, having like, it's like what we're seeing now is what you're talking about with the atheists, like 100 years ago, when atheists were in control. I mean, now Mexico has a pagan for a president.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy. Like she had a pagan ritual during the inauguration, and it's like, whoa.
They're super secularizing. Like it's
like time out. But they're also run by cartels now, and they do an anti-gospel, right? Like they have the Saint Muerte, I think is what they call it. Like just basically a blasphemous image of Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Yeah, what I've heard is they have like a demon ritual or something like that before they go out and do hits, and I mean they're totally demonic.
Right, but it gets to your point about like Latin America, because like that was one I planned to do. Santa Muerte. One of my next videos is going to be on Latin America, because we do assume like even Protestant friends or Protestant coworkers that I work with will go like, well, yeah, there's a lot of Catholics coming in because of the immigration, and they'll talk about deportations and whatnot, but I'll be like, well, about half of them are Catholic. The other half are Protestant.
They drift away pretty quick. I actually had a thought, back to kind of like the study and how this all kind of comes together is, I've kind of been thinking about like currently the whole dispute is all over the Latin Mass versus the Novus Ordo and that such. But as I've been telling like a lot of my friends, like, look, if you actually look into the council, like it gets weirder. Like the creepiest thing to me was the change in the calendar. Like my feast days are totally different than some of my other Catholic friends. They're like, oh, happy Saint blah 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 day. I'm like, what?
Cyril and Methodius instead of Valentine.
Yeah, like so it wasn't just the Mass. Everything changed. And yes, those things can change. Now, typically those things would be very gradually tinkered with over thousands of
Correct. Yeah.
years. This was very odd because everything changed. But this is the point. It changed in ways that it still had the feel of the old enough that it didn't like rock people immediately out of the church, right?
Right.
It was this, and this goes to the real presence thing. It was almost like this slow drip of poison that you won't like I would say, okay, like junk food. Like people will say this, they'll be like, junk food's poison for your body. I'm like, yeah, like if you eat a lot of it over a long period of time, but like don't get on me because I want, a cupcake once in a while. Right. Like that's not
Right.
gonna kill
Yeah.
me. That's kind of like the same thing with a lot of these reforms is like, oh, like, because you've got those hardcore, like never Novus Ordo types that
Yeah.
like will literally skip their Sunday obligation if they're on vacation and they can't get to a Latin mass. I'm like, okay, that's
Right.
like treat that like your cupcake. Um, but if you eat that all the time, and I think that's what the study showed, like you're gonna get heart disease. And the study basically shows that the more you are exposed to irreverent Novus Ordos, let's just put it that way,
Yeah.
irreverent practices, you will slowly lose the necessary faith in one of the most essential dogmas of the church. So it's kind of like that. Like, I don't, how old are you, Ryan?
I'm 37.
Okay, I'm 34. So we're the same age group. Like, you probably were in high school at the time where all the potheads were like, oh, bro, it's not physically addicting, it's just mentally addicting. And
Yep.
then, and then, I mean, I smoked some pot in college. I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. And then like a year of doing that, I'm like, this is terrible. Like I gotta stop. This is not good. It's not like I don't know, like methamphetamine where you're like dead in a year, right?
Yep.
You're crippled a bit. You're kind of slowed. You're not as quick. You care less about things. But one hit isn't going to turn you into a hobo on the street begging for money, right?
Correct.
So that's kind of how I've seen this stuff play out is the more a Catholic is exposed to very novel and irreverent practices over time, lex
Yep.
orandi, lex credendi. But you have, I mean, it's there's some gym bros in the Twitter sphere who are kind of like all about like lifting weights and stuff like that. I'm not one of those. They could probably have the similar analogy that if like you skip leg day, it's fine once in a while, but you can't skip leg day, right? Because then your legs are going to get weak, and then the rest of your body's going to get weak. Like these
Yep.
are things that compound, and I think
Yes.
post council, all of these things have slowly compounded to a now we can talk faith and that, but just pure demographics. Like, are people staying in the church?
Yep.
No, they're leaving. I talk to ex-Catholics and they're kind of like hesitant, like they don't want to offend me. And I'm like, no, like give me your worst because I want to hear about it. I
Yep.
want to hear like how much you hate the Catholic Church. And they're like, what? I'm like, no, seriously, like I'm really fascinated in this stuff because they're all leaving. So I'd like to hear. And oh my gosh, the things they
That's
start
how you
talking
solve
about.
the problem is you
Right.
first have like that is the true listening. It's not these like I'm okay. We're just talking about everything right now. Okay. But
Let's do
the like with the synod, they'll come out and be like,
it.
"Hey, listen to this." And you're like, "Okay, like these are the problems that we're facing. We've got the Rainbow Brigade at our door and I can't say anything at work or else I'm going to get fired." And my kids being taught this in public schools, my kids don't go to public schools, but like people have said
Yeah.
that, and then just nothing is done.
Mhm.
Except for the opposite has happened. You get the Father James Martin situation going on, the promotion of that stuff, and that's listening, right? Like that's listening. It's like they cherry pick what is listening, what's not, because in order to solve a problem, you need to know what is the problem first. And the problem isn't that we're not accepting of people on the margins. Like that's a false statement.
Right.
And I hate the fact that it's promoted as if like we are like just these rigid people. We're not. Um, but like this idea of like we have real problems and just nothing's being addressed, or it's addressed in such a way where it's like, okay, well, nothing's going to happen.
No, of course nothing's going to happen. The whole dialogue and accompaniment, I mean, it is the softest crap I've ever heard. And look, I've worked in corporate America where they'll call anything except what it really is.
Yep.
I mean, you work in any large corporation, they just soften the crap out of everything. I have never.
I do work in a corporation. No, I'm just like.
I have never seen my old wrestling coach used to call it like soft batch cookie shit. To like basically like if we were being like weak at practice or soft and not like we didn't have a good practice, he would call us like soft batch cookies. I have never seen such a like soft batch cookie pitch than as the Synod on. I mean, the name itself is Synod on Synodality. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. None of that projects strength. None of it projects competency. I know very liberal people. Some of them are my relatives. And with my grandmother, and my grandmother just loves to go to these like grief sessions. It's eerily similar to what the Synod is about. I mean, it's just a bunch of people who are on the margins, sure. I mean, anybody can be in the margins in a particular walk of life at any particular time.
Yep.
But these are like very quote unquote marginalized people, usually with like some health problems. And so like they just all go, and it's like this, I mean, it's exactly what you see in the movies, like the circle of people, and they kind of share their story. And that's like exactly what's going on in the Synod. But I mean, and to the church's credit, they're never going to change dogma. They say that all the time, even Pope Francis. So it's like, it's actually kind of cruel to some of these people because they're being dangled over here like, oh yeah, like we're going to legalize all of these forbidden things. But no, we're actually just going to listen to you. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Like that doesn't help them. And then you just don't even pay attention to the other problems, like everybody leaving. It's a freaking disaster.
Well, right, because like those when we are trying to address these issues, like my grandmother, for example, in a similar fashion, I remember her saying, "Oh, well, Pope Francis is going to change something." This is like as soon as he became Pope. He's going to change things. And I'm like, what things? And then she couldn't tell me. And I think that was I'm not throwing my grandmother under the bus just for the sake of doing that. That's not what I'm saying. I love my grandmother. Like, but the idea of you have this expectation, and it's like a carrot on a stick, and it's not going to happen. And like you said, it's very cruel. Because instead of coming down clearly and stating, hey, this isn't going to happen. Like, you know, what Pope Francis eventually did on the 60 Minutes where, you know, can someone become a woman become a priest? No.
He went like, no.
Yeah, it was like the buildup was hilarious. But like when it came to finally the trans stuff, like we did eventually get a document, but man, like did that take forever? Like
it just like think about the amount of time that could have been spent properly explaining the merciful transformative nature of the real teachings of the church to people who are struggling in those areas. And instead they were basically kept at arm's length with hints and insinuations, tons of hints and insinuations. I mean, that's what created the whole trad media blogosphere, was getting mad about these hints and insinuations. And then, so what it does...
That's why Anthony's mad that it's going to die off soon.
Yeah, I don't know, like, is Leo... I mean, Leo is... I call him Francis Light right now. He just seems to be kind of doing everything like 3 notches down. So... but then again, it's like, so like, are we going to change it? I mean, it's not going to please anyone because like the trads want things to change from Francis. So like, here's the thing, a Leo the 14th would have been great after Benedict. I mean, how can I say that? He's only been Pope for 6 months, so I don't really know what he's going to be like, but I'm kind of viewing him as like this very keep everyone happy type pope right now, which I think is a fair statement to say based on his actions. That would have
Like
been
an
fine.
intermediate,
Would
like
have been
a
fine under Benedict.
transitional. Yeah.
But you've got like what was that second terrible Star Wars movie they came out with like all the like purple-haired people?
The Last Jedi.
Right.
I hated that movie.
I hated that movie too, and I felt so bad because they fired the director. I felt so bad for the next guy. I'm like, dude, how do you like salvage this trilogy now? That's kind of how I view Leo. Is like he would have been fine after Benedict because the only people he would only have to deal with one lobby group wanting change, the left, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Now, because Francis pissed off all the trads with the Latin Mass restrictions, we need change back. And the progressives want change forward. How can you manage that? You can't have the church, I mean, or we're just gonna like split off into our like separate but not separate groups. Like, okay, the trads get their Latin Mass and James Martin can keep going. I mean, then what is this? Like he is in a terrible position.
Yeah. And like, so in the event that Pope Leo is watching, which is highly unlikely, but in all seriousness though, so you have Pope Benedict clarifies that the TLM's okay, right?
Right.
Everything about the TLM's good. All of the sacraments with the traditional forms of the sacraments retained, great, awesome. And then Pope Francis, the next papacy, so like the next papacy reverses all of that. And that is like Leo has a question that like Pope Leo's in a situation where he's like, all right, so do I move forward with what Benedict did, where there was growth and there was people, there's the evidence we just talked about, like there's in that group there were people growing and communities were forming and they weren't dying. Or do I stick with what Pope Francis did for the sake of
continuity,
like from the previous, because like there's either continuity with Benedict or continuity with Francis. Like that's his choice. And if we're going to go for because then you get into the whole, okay, well, what did the letters actually say? Like my former archbishop, right, like said an amazing statement about the TLM, because it was really under his watch that everything blossomed.
Mm-hmm.
And so we like 10% of our parishes are TLMs, and they're great communities, and it's causing the other Novus Ordos to be more reverent. Not all of them. Oh my gosh.
That was what the real study said.
Well, right.
Yeah.
And so like that, like it was crazy to me that's I'd like to see what the journalist found, because she hasn't posted everything. So I'm very much like, I'd like to believe you, but like literally provide the receipts, because this is kind of important detail.
I thought she followed up with more, but I could have been wrong. I mean, I know the first bombshell was the summary.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people were kind of hedging on her credibility, which is good credibility. So
yeah. Yes.
I mean, I just know on the ground, like that was a bunch of nonsense. So I think actually, like if I had a all-seeing orb, it would tell me exactly kind of like the study we just looked at, which is like, yeah, like I'm not surprised by any of this. But yeah, I mean, like the unfortunate thing is that Leo is his only comment on the TLM, which everybody was like waiting for, it was, oh, maybe we can address it with synodality. And I was like, all right, guys, you got to go to plan B now. Look, if that's your thing on like the restrictions on the Latin Mass, this is going to take forever. I think 4 years at least. And that's if. And now I feel like one of the transgender people who thought Francis was going to like totally legitimize me. And I'm feeling strung along too. So now like Leo is in a position where he is stringing along, not intentionally, but like he is in this position with the synodality process that if he's going
it's a hard position to be in.
If he's going to commit to synodality, then yes, I mean, essentially he is stringing along all the people who want female deacons, all the people who want gay marriage, all the people who want the traditional Latin Mass. Like, this is just, it's like those movies in Vietnam where you step on the mine and as soon as you move, you're going to blow up. I feel like whichever way he moves, he's going to get blasted for this.
Right.
He's got to be very, very careful. And honestly, there's kind of this, I think Anthony Stein from Returning to Tradition has put out kind of this, like, not a bet, but like a question. Like, if you got your Latin Mass and everything else went to hell, would you be happy? I'm actually thinking that's probably the way things are going to go, is he's just going to try to pacify everybody, and it's going to be the Wild West, right? Like, you're going to get your Fiducius Supplicans blessings, and you're you're going to get Traditionis Custodes repealed back.
I don't have any insider information, but based off like what he's done so far, like the state of Germany, for example, which is really pushing back, is not great, and it's getting worse, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's not like it's like just stagnant, waiting on Pope Leo to say something.
Oh yeah, they're pushing. Yeah, they're pushing.
And so it's like he could just look at what happened during Francis and just go, okay, well, we need to just stop this, like, because it's creating a schism. Like, I would argue that informally they are in schism because they think they can do so many things, and they are doing so many things against the order of what the Pope has stated.
Even Francis told them to slow down, like, stop. You can't do this until now everyone got mad at Francis because he said until the rest of the church.
Because it's like a foregone conclusion. But with the assumption that we're always going to get more progressive, and that's like that's the lie of the Enlightenment.
Right.
I hate the Enlightenment. Like,
I do too. But that's kind of the problem here, is that, like, the more progressive these dioceses and parishes get, the faster they die, which that's actually encouraging. That would really depress me if it was the opposite.
Well, right, because like that's right, because it's like, oh yeah, if I do like if I do eat poison, I am going to die faster. Okay, good.
Right.
Like,
yeah, good. Like,
the universe is working as expected. Great.
Right.
Like, that's awesome.
Right.
It sucks that you're dying though. Like, I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, like, literally, their souls are dying. That's my biggest problem with the way the last pontificate handled some of these hot button topics I kind of mentioned earlier. Like, you could have spent all of that time very charitably and graciously bringing people into the truth and the true teaching of how to deal with very difficult topics, which is what the world needs now. Like, the world actually, like, the more radical the Catholic dogma is, the more controversial it is, in my opinion, as a convert, the more beautiful it is. Things like confession. Like, dude, I talk to my like agnostic friends and some of my Protestant friends, and they're like, man, I wish we had, like, my one friend, he's like a diehard Protestant. He's like, that was my only problem with Martin Luther, is they got rid of confession. He loves confession. It's like, dude, like, the amount of time that Francis had a lot of trust. He had a lot of ammo in his trust bank. He could have very diplomatically and very slowly and very even synodality-esque dialogue-y way gotten these groups of marginalized people closer, but instead it was like they were given free pass to continually live in mortal sin for 13 plus years.
That's what the actions of the like the PR and everything, or like, it's almost like, this isn't going to seem related, but it is, but like the artist for Luce.
I'm not
familiar. For Luce is, that little Jubilee.
Oh, yeah.
So the artist is a former Catholic who does designs as part of his repertoire sexual toys. And you know what I mean? Like, it's like, gosh, like, of the millions of artists that are Catholics, like, you pick the marginal case of a former Catholic to do this, but like, is he practicing now? Is he doing anything? Is he moved in the faith to be more faithful at all? Like, or is he just making bank? Right? Like, that's like the problem. Is you don't know what the motives are with the synodality and like what comes from it. You just know that, what is it? it's almost like I would relate it to, and this may be very pessimistic of me, but like mindfulness, right? Like I don't do that practice at all. I don't meditate like that. I pray. Like that's my meditation is prayer.
Yeah.
But like mindfulness is like you are emptying yourself out and you're just like letting everything in.
Anything in. There's no filter.
And it's just like, no, like you can't just let anything in. There needs to be some direction or you're going to be lost or you're going to get something in there that really shouldn't be. And it's kind of like the same thing. Like we keep seeing ordination of women, female deacons, married priests.
Look at the study we just went over. Like a lot of those practices weren't called for by the Second Vatican Council, and a lot of those practices weren't even in the first reforms of the Mass. They crept in later.
Yep.
The Synod on Synodality is a continuation of this perpetual revolution in the Church, but now it's not even being, I mean, it kind of is being led by the hierarchy, but it's being pitched as even less so led by the hierarchy. So we're at a moment in the crisis of the Church. I mean, this is the one thing that gives me comfort is like, if some Catholics are all like doom and gloom, like end of the world. Yeah. I don't think so. So like, let's assume the world lasts for another 1,000+ years. Can you imagine what the historians will write about this time? It'll be a lot of people reading back and I'll be like, how did like Catholics even figure out what to do? Like they're so confused. So we're at a time of the crisis in the Church when like people are so confused. Like they don't even know, for example, like what is a mortal sin, what isn't. And there are in, unique new areas, some places where the Church could offer clarity and they don't. The Church seems to be completely asleep. A lot of people have like described, they've described the Church as going through the Passion because it is the mystical body of Christ, that it's going through like a passion sense. And that's why I actually really liked your analogy of like all the successors of the apostles are acting exactly like the apostles did during the start of the Passion story. Right. But I also think it can tie into Christ's life on earth as well. Is like I feel like this is a sleep at the helm of the boat moment. The Church is totally sedated right now. They're so sedated. I've never like it's the time where there is so much low-hanging fruit on how to help people. There's so much confusion and disorder, and you wouldn't even have to go for the most controversial things right now. But the mindset of all the successors of the apostles just seems to be just don't say anything, don't ruffle any feathers.
And it makes it worse.
Yeah.
Too. Like because it's more radical now to say that marriage is between a man and a woman than it was 10 years ago.
But they were chicken shit 10 years ago.
Exactly.
And now they would actually face some actual consequences.
Right. Because of and it's crazy because like I remember Cardinal Dolan being on a news broadcast and he's being asked about the first openly gay basketball player. And he like I remember him saying, "Good for him," coming out. And I was just like,
Do you know how easy?
Why are you saying that? Like, and like, go watch it because it's not like it is on YouTube. So like, I don't want to pretend like I it will floor you because the mentality at the time was just like, what? Why are you ceding ground?
Yeah,
and because that's what it is. It's all about ceding ground, and we seem to just be in a habit of doing that. It's like we don't know how to win anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like from the hierarchy, like some hierarchy is, like I said, Corleone, like he seems to understand what needs to happen. And within the limits of his diocese, he's trying to do that. The problem is that we need that happening everywhere.
Right.
Not just there. And
we need it more than ever because the world is worse than it was, say, in 1940.
Yep.
Like, I mean, we talk about like, all these like little changes in the Mass, and I attribute it to eating too much junk food. Like go outside of the Mass, look at the way fasting has become completely sidelined to Lent alone. Think about this historically. Like we're in a time of mass obesity which is a good problem to have because it used to be you were always at risk of starvation, right? Like one bad crop yield and people would die.
Yep.
We are at a time when we have the luxury to fast without the anxiety of starvation. Ancient Christians who regularly lived with starvation scenarios would fast. So the church almost I'm not saying the church needs more fasting than it did pre-Vatican
I
II.
think so.
But it at least needs
I
the
absolutely do
same.
think so.
It at least needs the same. You know, we're the whole thing like, oh, it's got to be for modern man, modern man. Well, let's look at modern man. Modern man lives I'm in a 72-degree room. If I want to, and I'm in the South, so it's generally hot. Even this time of year, it doesn't start to get cool yet. I go, let's say it's not right now, but let's say it's 90 degrees and humid. It's disgusting outside.
Yeah.
And I want to go somewhere. I jump in my truck and crank the AC, and I'm back to my nice, cozy 72-degree bubble that I just was in my house. And then I get out, it's hot and humid for 2 seconds, and then I walk into the store where it's also a nice, cozy 72 degrees. We are so, like, I mean, I can seriously buy anything I want on Amazon. It's there in 2 days. Everything is so easy. You have to work overtime and be intentional to actually get a touch of asceticism, which all Catholics believed was necessary to develop virtue and good habits. So the church now, as the world has made things easier for us, has also made things easier for us. And, you know, okay, sure, one Friday, great, Ember Days, yes. And this is fun. So we're actually in Ember Days now, in the not Vatican II update, but the right before Vatican II, they slightly updated it. Mm-hmm. So I went super trad, and I did last week's Ember Days because that's like more trad than the 50s. That's like the 40s older version. Yeah, but like people don't do Ember Days anymore. And I'm not like, it's one of those things like, okay, maybe it's a Friday. Like I think Anthony tweeted on like it was like 4th of July fell on a Friday, and it's like, okay,
yep,
like, I'm gonna go with the conciliar reform and have my hot dog. Okay, but that's like spiritual junk food, right? Like, okay, I do it once in a while, but you start doing all of the post-conciliar stuff all of the time, you're going to get a chronic disease spiritually. Like seriously, and it's easier than ever to get the spiritual junk food, just like it's easier than ever to live in complete comfort today. It's absurd. Like the church is going in the exact opposite direction it needs to go at a time when we can least afford it.
And well, and here's something. I've mentioned this before, but it's pertinent to what you're talking about. So I ran for office. I ran for state representative once.
Oh, cool.
And I lost, but I got like 40% of the vote. So that's
in Michigan, nice. That's pretty impressive.
And that was when I was 24. And I haven't run for that position or anything higher in that sense. But the thing that you get to know about, and I've learned this also in business, like because I'm a statistician for corporations, and when you deal with marketing, there's for both politics and business, there's how many touches do you touch on a person to get the maximum propensity or likelihood that they'll do something you want, right? Whether it be voting or buying your products.
I assume you mean like interfacing, not physically touching.
Right. So like it would be impressions, emails, letters at your door, knocks at your door from someone, and the number's at around 7. Okay. So like that's where it kind of hits the bell curve at the highest, right? Like, so
if you're doing 8, 9 touches, you're wasting energy. You should move on to the next person.
You'll have marginal increases, but it'll yes. Yes. And so but the but the point is this though. We used to have 1/3 of our year having feast days or fast days or days of obligation, right? Like it was 1/3 of our year.
In the 1900s, early, yeah.
Yep. So before 1966, which is when all of that changed. Ember Days got rid of in the United States. Ember Days were gotten rid of. the fast days were basically removed. And then our holy days of obligation, which according to canon law is supposed to be 10, is adjusted to like 6 in America.
Right.
And so we went down significantly. And so, like, my wife and I will talk about Friday meals. Like, we'll talk about what we're going to have. Are we going to have tuna casserole? Are we going to have salmon? Are we going to have tilapia? Just pasta, right? Like buttered noodles.
Yeah.
Something like that. And the reason why we're doing that is because we're thinking about Jesus. And the reason why we're thinking about Jesus is because Friday is, a penitential day. And so we don't, every Friday, we, outside of extreme circumstances, like you said, junk food, we will take the post-conciliar approach, but usually we stick to like no meat on Friday for all Fridays.
Yep.
And so the amount of touches that we would be talking about if we had fast days, though, would be huge. And our schedule would reflect that. And so you would have this constant reminder of real interactions with thinking about Christ and acting them out, as opposed to just, well, whatever. Like, whatever Friday is. And of course we'll go Sunday, right? Like that's like the 29% that go to mass, right? Like that's of the 20% of Americans. And so like the idea of we don't have enough engagement, like actual engagement, and everyone's just doing a melting pot of devotions. Like everyone's like, do the rosary, do the Divine Mercy Chaplet, do X, Y, and Z. Oh, I really have this devotion to St. Thomas More. Oh, I have this, and so you end up getting all these like.
It's so fragmented. There's no unity.
Yes, exactly. And so, and people really push the rosary. I think the rosary is a beautiful thing. I personally do not have a devotion currently. I did. It fell off, but I personally do not have a devotion for that right now going on. But it is something that a lot of people are promoting because it is a good thing, and a lot of Marian apparitions have pointed to it in a profound way. And so, I know that's private revelation, but
it's pretty much accepted by dogma, even amongst
like that in terms of devotional practice, it kind of is.
Yeah.
And so, I've been a part of Exodus 90. My wife has been a part of Magnify 90. Which requires you to do asceticism in a way like that was more in line with what happened like 70 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's still not approaching what they had to do.
Well, and you're alone. It's you and your wife.
Well, with Exodus 90, so Magnify 90 is for it. That is somewhat alone, but Exodus 90, you have a fraternity. And my first fraternity that I did with Exodus 90, I'm really good friends with, and we still meet every 2 weeks.
Oh, nice.
So like we, and we've been doing that for like 6 years. So it's been great.
But that's my point is like, that's about the best you can get is like a semi group, whereas it used to be the whole universal church.
Well, right. Cause there was a top. So like, that would be an example of a top down that, if that were to be enacted today, I do think that we would lose people, but I think we would gain them back because they would see that, oh, well, Catholics are more in shape. Catholics have more confidence. Catholics have a lot more things going on for them, even though they have a whole bunch of kids. Like I will, for example, like I have 5 kids. And so when I bring that up to some people, especially at work, they're kind of like blown away. They're like, how can you deal with that? And it's well, because I kind of want to just say, well, because I don't view my kids as like any of the slang terms that we use. Like I don't even want to say it, but one's like a goblin, right? Like, and it's just like, gosh, like that is not what my kid is. And it's just, but people will refer to it casually, but it gets internalized and they go on their phones and all that fun stuff. So
no, you're right about the touch points, Ryan. I mean, like,
Yeah, going back to that. Yeah, sorry.
It has to consume. I mean, what Christ says, like, I will always be with you.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, how much are we actually with him? You
Yep.
know, like, and that's a struggle. Like, I do pray the rosary every day, but like, it's a hard devotion, man. Like, because it's so long. Sometimes I do
Mhm.
have to break up the decades. But I'll find like I'm pretty good for like 4 Hail Marys, and then I'll get like distracted and have to bring myself back. It's like, dang, like
Yep.
I can't even give 20 minutes of undivided attention to like the creator of the entire universe. It's nuts the amount of distractions that we've got going on. But yeah, there should
Oh
be
yeah,
more.
like we got this. It's like
Yeah.
literally always next to us.
And even if it's about Catholic stuff, it's like that's not the highest level of devotion, arguing with
Yep.
Protestants all day or whatever. That's what I did, but today, but
Well, so going back to the study, so like you have this study,
Mhm.
people will say, okay, well, we need more, you know, catechesis, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's always about catechesis. Here's a program, and it's like this is where I think when it comes to meeting where people are at, it's like stop. You know they're coming to mass. Stop throwing out random programs. Just apply it in the mass,
Yeah.
and then you can add the programs after. Instead, we're just like, okay, well, Ascension Presents does this, and Catholic Answers does this, and it's like, great, they're making money off, the minority of people that really are into that.
Right.
But I don't have the time in the day to listen to all of those things and then take care of my 5 kids, go to work, and all this other stuff, and do
Right.
talk like this. But it's like if I go to mass and I notice something, like even something I don't like there's some trad things I didn't initially like,
Mhm.
but I've grown to appreciate them. And it's it's like part of that is because there's a humility, and if you practice that humility when you go, like when I go to, and this goes on your point about seeing the junk food all the time,
Mhm.
because there is a humility there, even if it isn't like the good kind of humility. It's a false sense of
Mhm.
humility where it's you're adjusting to the local population. Everyone else is doing a particular devotion, even if it's sinful or wrong, because you're seeing everyone else do it, and you don't want to be the standout just to be the standout, right? And
Right.
so you get caught up into that. Um, that doesn't happen. Like that hasn't happened with me for oh my gosh, I've been it seems like every for a while, like every parish I went to, they were standing during the Eucharistic prayer,
Uh,
and I was like, "What are you doing? Like, you should be kneeling." And so, like, you'd get people looking at you like that, but like that wasn't the point. The point wasn't I was kneeling to get attention. It was I was kneeling because that's what I'm supposed to do, and I don't
right.
care if you next to me are failing at doing that
Right.
or
Right.
that your priest hasn't told you. And so, but yeah, like
Well, your point's well taken because it's like, how many catechesis classes or how many Father Mike Schmidt videos are people gonna? All right, it's like this. Have you ever seen Saving Private? Not Saving Private. We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson. It's about the
no.
Vietnam War. Great movie. It's about the first Vietnam War engagement between the Viet Cong and American soldiers. Like 200 American soldiers versus like 2,000 Viet Cong. Incredible
Wow.
war movie. But they're all brand new. There are no like I think Mel plays a colonel who's a veteran of the Korean War, and they have one other sergeant. All other 198 guys are green,
Wow.
and it shows. So they actually they're the first like 30 minutes of the movie is about their training, and standard military training. Halfway through the training, he says, "All right, stop." He's like, and he talks to his radio guy. He says, "Hey, why are in the the team we have down at they're the military advisors that were advising the French." And so they get on the radio, and these guys in the States who are training to go to Vietnam are listening on the radio of live fire. And the point that the colonel's making, who's played by Mel Gibson, is that like it's going to get way different than the boot camp.
Yeah.
Like there's things we can train you for and things we can look at in theory and you can have it all in your mind, but it is just different when you're under live fire. It is different in practice. It's funny. I took a Vietnam War class in college taught by a Vietnam veteran. He flew rescue helicopters, downed pilots, parachute out. He'd go pick them up. He had like 198 successful missions. And he had this famous saying, which I think is very apt to the Vietnam War and the council as well. The difference between theory and practice is greater in practice than it is in theory. And it took me a while to think about that. But I mean, basically what he's saying is in theory, there's minor adjustments you need to make. When it comes to practicing things, it's huge. So we've got the church saying, oh, we need better catechesis. Well, okay, so like if I understand the dogma of X, Y, Z, but I don't see it lived out every Sunday, and Sunday's like the bare minimum. To your point, like Friday, you're thinking of Christ. Like, but most Catholics are only doing that during Lent, right?
Yep.
You need more touch points of practice. And the church, even at this state, if they have their heads on straight, some of these bishops are like, we need more catechesis. Yeah, sure, but quite honestly, I think practicing would be a better catechesis than, hey, let's sit down after Mass for an hour and go through the catechism. I'm not saying you don't do that. It's just like that's all theory. That's the trainees in the United States training. That's not in Vietnam. Like Vietnam is where you're fasting on Friday, or you're struggling with a mortal sin, so you're doing acts of penance. Like that's the rough stuff. But that will conform you to be way more disposed to the proper dogmas when that piece of paper in the catechism is presented to you. I think we're just doing it backwards. I actually think we should, it's kind of like, do you teach a kid to swim by throwing him in the deep end, or do you like baby him all the way for 5 years until he can swim? I think we just need to start throwing people in the deep end. Maybe I'm just being impatient, but like, let's just start acting it, right? Like, let's get the bells out during the consecration. Let's get the kneelers back out. And also, you got to look at like the worst enemies within the church. They're all doing the opposite of that. The bishop in Charlotte is like removing, like even in high schools, he's like removing kneelers. Like,
that is very odd.
It's like I think it's odd.
Like,
It's odd because we just can't quite get to the point of realizing that there are people in church positions that are enemies of the church. Which goes to my point of when I talk to outsiders about like the church is actively repressing the only thing that's growing.
Yep.
And then you get that creepy question, why would they do that?
Yeah, because no corporation would do that, right? Like
you could bring in consultants from Ernst & Young, pay them $800 an hour and say, hey, we have this problem, help us fix it. And be like, don't repress your one growth metric.
Yep.
And then you hear the bishops and they're like, okay, anything but that. Like, please tell us we can just do millions of dollars for a Eucharistic procession. I'm not knocking that thing. It's just cost benefit to that.
It's so look, taking a modern event that just happened, like Charlie Kirk being assassinated. Like there is a type of Protestant-esque revival going, with his memorial, right?
Yeah.
And I say Protestant, even though there are a lot of Catholics there, because the memorial resembled more of a
mega church
Protestant service than a Catholic one, right? And it's like they want the Eucharistic revival to have that kind of weight within the Catholic sphere, but it's like you can't manufacture that.
No,
it has to be organic, and it has to come from places but it's going to happen. Like, for example, you have a bishop who with a series of bishops, like, for example, Michigan, you have 7 dioceses, one being the Archdiocese of Detroit, and all of them coming out and doing something against the secular group, and then one of them getting injured or killed for whatever reason. You just pick whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
If a bishop died in the line of defending the faith, and it was the faith, right? It wasn't a pet project. It wasn't.
Right.
It was faith that everyone agreed on.
Like he got shot at a Eucharistic procession.
Right. Like it would be, oh, well, this can't stand. Like you would have a similar reaction to the Charlie Kirk reaction. I don't hope that happens.
Right,
However,
right.
when you are in conflict with the culture, because we're not supposed to be like holding hands with the culture, right? That's what I hate about when people say like, well, Vatican II and the sexual revolution, and the sexual revolution was just like the main reason everything sucked. Look at all the other denominations. And I'm like, no, the sexual revolution should have been combated by the church.
Yes.
And we didn't do that.
Yeah.
And so you can't say that because we sucked at our job that
We simply
because of the sexual
we accompanied them.
well, right. Or whatever. It's just it is getting a bit it's getting a bit ridiculous where it's like, okay, seriously, like, do you care? Right? Like,
No.
are you going to come out and say something? Like my archbishop went and he protested ICE.
Right.
I'm gonna walk a fine line because he's my archbishop, and I'm not gonna say certain things because even though I'm giving away certain attitudes by saying that, I'm not going to say certain things because he's still my archbishop. But it's like he's at least acting on his action, like on his beliefs.
It's like doing something,
even if I don't agree with that.
Right.
And so that is more than the ones who are just sitting there.
There's a lot of
and you're right, like that's a lot of them. We have 176 Latin dioceses in the United States.
And we know
why is it taking so long? Well, not all of them have their own bishops either. Pope Leo's getting to that, but it's not all of them have a bishop. But the why don't we have more of a like effort to be like, no, like public schools shouldn't be promoting a religion to our kids that like, is at complete odds to what we believe.
Easy stuff.
Right, because like it's when you say it's like low-hanging fruit, it's like education, like 8-hour education that says no, you can't openly say Christ is king on a regular basis because it might offend someone else, or you're telling someone who thinks they're a dog, but that's like a real thing, right?
Yeah.
Like some people look at that. There's a school by me that has like cat litter in the bathroom.
Right. Yeah.
That's like
Joe Rogan talked about that. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like that is not hard to come out and say, yeah, if your school is doing this, if you're not saying something, you have a problem. Like you yourself, as a practicing Catholic, have a moral problem that you might be sinning because you're not saying anything in light of this evil that is being given to your child.
Yeah.
And it's like that's not a hard thing to understand, because it'll ultimately lead them away from the faith if they keep eating that type of poison. And so that's why my kids are in private school. But like it's like I mean, but
good for you. Last question before I've got to jump.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been like 2 hours, so I appreciate.
Do you think that the inaction of the bishops, generally speaking, I mean, we've talked about there's outliers on both good and bad ends, and it's not just in the Americas. I mean, this seems to be pretty global. Do you think a lot of them are kind of neutered from the priest abuse scandal? Because I see that, like when you go into like just a secular comment section and you try to defend the faith, like rapist priest just gets brought. It's just instant. Like the Reddit bros just jump all over you. I'm not trying to like excuse it. Certainly not the abuse. I mean, I'm not trying to excuse the inaction, but it's a very plausible motive for a general passiveness that we've seen. Now, I wasn't Catholic or even aware of Catholicism much pre-scandal, and you're a little older than me, but that's just something I'd be curious about. Like, did we get more pushback from things when the church had credibility? Because quite honestly, I think that scandal just shattered it.
Yeah, so like when I was growing up, like I was getting made fun of. The town was like Protestant Catholic, and I was getting made fun of, being raped by a priest, right?
Oh,
like,
wow.
that was like a thing that would come up. Because even when I was younger, I was pretty devout, in terms of I need to go to mass on Sunday. Like that is something I need to do. And I did have a lapse later, but the point that I'm getting at with this is if I became a priest, that would be something that would be in the back of my mind because of my experience. And I think that's a common experience for people who grew up at a certain age and above, where that was constantly reinforced. And so I do think that
the scandal was reinforced.
Right. And so you have that stigma in the back of your head, like, all right, so if I do this, will I just be accused of X, Y, and Z? And, there are some actions that I think could reinforce a trust with that. Like, for example, I think the idea of open confessions is a huge risk. To just be able to go into a room with a priest. Like that is a huge risk. Going back to more traditional forms of confession where we have, the walls, right? And you can't go like that should be everywhere. Because unfortunately, priests are still accused of doing things even today. And when I did that I looked at the project, what is it? The Catholic Project with Father John Brown, who's a Jesuit from Louisiana. We went over that and we talked about the sexual abuse and the accusation and how many priests think they have the backing of the bishop during an accusation, and how many think they're going to get thrown underneath the bus. And most of them, get thrown underneath the bus, like that's what they think. And the bishops were asked the same question. They're like, yeah, I'll support it. Like it was like the biggest disparity in the entire analysis, because it was like 96% bishops. And then it was like 10-15% priests or something. It was crazy. And so I think that that's very much in the back of their minds, that if they go out and they say something, that some random person's just going to come out and, because I mean, like, you have someone who's popular, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Pick a popular priest. There's plenty of them.
Father Mike, yeah.
Right, and the there's always this concern. Oh, you know what? Father Martin's. So Father Martin's, the one that does the Exorcist Files.
Okay.
He was accused of something.
Right.
And
it was recently dropped.
And it was dropped because there was enough evidence to show that it didn't happen. And the accusations were quite wild. And but like that's a constant concern.
Yeah.
And that anybody can do that.
Yeah.
Just like with the baker, right? Baking the cake, who's still in court. Like he's still in court this day.
Everybody reports that he won. I'm like, no, they just remanded it to the lower courts. Like he's been in court for 19 plus years now.
Yep. It's like that could happen to the priests and bishops. But like here's the thing that they have to deal with. Too bad.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's either you're constantly neutered, like you are literally neutered. You're not able to spread the faith in an effective manner. And you are constantly playing, a type of victim, or you go out and you do that. And then the faithful back you up and be like, no, he's a solid priest. No, you're just screwing with him. Right. Like, because the laity needs to support the priests. Like we need to get off our, like those of us that go to mass need to recognize that our priest is our priest, and you need to support him until like actual evidence comes up against him, right? And if you can't, like obviously if something bad happens, right, like the evidence is there, right, that's a problem, like shame on that priest. But if there's not, and it's just an accusation with no substance, you really should still support him. Like you shouldn't treat him as if he's a pariah already when there's no evidence against him. And I think that was a discussion that me and Father John had, because it was just, you can't always take the accuser's side, because then you'll have no priests. Like, that could be an effective strategy to literally neuter all Catholic priests in America.
Well, I mean, it was foretold by Our Lady of Good Success in Quito, Ecuador, in this like 17th century. Literally predicted a scandal would break out in the priesthood in the latter half of the 20th century that would scandalize the entire priesthood. So I think she
Wow.
specifically said that there was a minority of the priests would scandalize the entire vocation of priesthood.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, yes. Akita, like for anyone who like doesn't believe in Marian apparitions, the apparition in Akita, Ecuador is wild. Like super specific. Predicted Vatican I, predicted a bunch of things. But yeah, like the priest abuse scandal, it didn't get that specific, but it was foretold.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense. I would, to end on a good note, well, it's a good and a bad note. I think particularly for young priests who are very conservative, one, I'm super excited for that. I've seen the fruits of that already with more millennial priests, but like the Gen Z priests coming up, and then like it's just going to get better. They don't have that fear as much because they didn't live through it. They have no memory of it. The bad news is on the laity side, I'm seeing like this absolute like they don't understand the danger of it either. So they're not as on guard on the laity side. Like, I'm talking like you legit have evidence. Like, I see people like trying to defend that stuff.
Wait, are you saying that there's like not just a credible? I hate the term credible accusation,
right?
Because it can be used in court in a way that it doesn't actually reflect reality.
No, I'll be more clear. They are defending the way the bishops handled it in the past.
Whoa.
Yeah, this is mostly Gen Z. A ton of Gen. I've argued with people on Twitter about this. So again, it's anecdotal. I don't know how widespread it is, but they clearly don't understand how bad it was because they didn't live through it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I like educate them. I'm like, look, you can just Google this stuff. Like it's not like I was like 25 and like super sharp minded. I was like 10.
Yeah.
So I don't know why you have to live through something all the time to recognize how terrible this was.
Right.
And they still like they just don't get it. And like, well, like, the bishops guide the church. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what to tell you. Like it's like this. I've kind of been touching on this a bit on my Twitter feed a lot, but like with the young people, there is a branch of them that get real cult like. Like you can never critique anything wrong ever.
Yeah. I definitely know a few accounts that you're probably referring to.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I'm not going to call them out, but
they have weird names. But like, I'm talking just like your random people that have like a couple hundred followers. It's definitely a trend, and it's scary. So on the good side, you may have good, solid priests that have no issues, and they're bold enough because they don't live with those scars, if you will.
Yeah.
But the same, the double-edged sword then is the laity may start excusing. Because the bad behavior, I'm not going to say it's going to continue at that rate, but any organization where you have close contact with children is an attraction point for those types of sickos. You see it in public schools, you see it in the Boy Scouts. That's just what happens. So there will still be cases, and in those cases where it's like I would just say this: the bishops should investigate with prudence.
Yes.
And do their due diligence. And I don't like what I'm seeing from the people in the lay circles who didn't live through it, kind of being like, oh yeah, it was okay to like pass these guys around to die. I'm like, I don't know how you can even come to that conclusion. But I think
so. Like the only thing I can think of is the fact that was a normal thing to happen, not just in the church, but across institutions.
Right.
It doesn't justify it. It just means that everyone is doing it.
It's not unique to Catholicism to pass even credibly accused sexual abusers around. Like, look, I went to high school and a guy got fired, and I was close enough with the other teacher, who's an English teacher. I was close enough with the other English teacher, and she told me that he got fired for like, she didn't go into super detail, but it was of some sexual nature, right? And then he got hired at the like rival school 6 months later.
Wow.
The teachers unions and stuff. And I know that this guy had those proclivities because he made a super inappropriate comment to a girl right next to me in class. And I literally, like, I didn't even think. I just retorted right back. I'm like, that was inappropriate. Like, I was shocked by it. He just walked away. But no, this was certainly credible. I don't know what happened, but like I saw the evidence beforehand that he had like he said something really inappropriate. He got fired, which, like to fire a public school teacher is very hard to do.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
like I used to be so when I lost the state representative,
Mhm.
I ran for school board.
Oh.
And I became a trustee, and we tried to fire someone because they made fun of an autistic kid in their class and then shared it around with other teachers. And the teachers union was like, nope, we're going to we have this chest and we're just going to hold you up in court and waste your money. And we couldn't do it.
Yeah. So this guy got fired, which it's like,
Yep.
whoa, that's almost as bad as like a woman losing custody of her children. Like you have to be so bad for that to happen. And then he got hired at the rival school, and I was just like, oh my God. And I knew because the other teacher told me that it had to do with underage girls. That's all that was said. I'm like, oh my gosh. Now, hopefully it was just a comment and that nothing physical transpired, but still, like, you hear those comments like that, the guy should not be hired around young children.
Right.
He instantly was. So you're right. It's not unique to the Catholic Church, but the church should be at the same or higher, I argue, higher standard for moral integrity. And they were totally caught napping. And I really hope that they don't get caught napping this time, because nobody but the Catholics should repeat that mistake twice. Like, we've been through the ringer. We better not lose that valuable lesson. But I want to say positive. Like, I think the young based priests, one, to your point earlier, those types of things happen with less frequency the more orthodox you are, especially theologically. Like, you're risking hellfire for that. And then, like, I think they will then be emboldened as well because they just simply don't have that historical baggage. So yeah, I think the church is going to look way different. I mean, I've talked about this on other channels, but I think the church is going to look way different in a positive way. It's going to be a mixed bag because you're going to see a lot of parishes fall off, but you're going to see small, I mean, it's Benedict's prophecy, really, a smaller, holier church. So, and I think maybe then those young priests will become bishops and actually look at the study that you've shown us today and actually do something about it. So I think that would be the positive, is change is coming. The next two generations that are running the church in 20 years will be gone. And yeah, maybe they're going to look at these studies and actually start doing something. So
yeah, hopefully. If not already, because those priests that are now, they're going to be the bishops. So
yeah, pretty soon.
So all right. So I just want to say thanks for coming on and talking through this, because talking alone, man, it's so boring. It's so boring to go through data alone.
For like 50 minutes today, and I was like just looking at myself. But thank you, Ryan. It was a pleasure to come on.
Yeah. Where can I know you started your channel. What's your channel name?
It's called Pre-Conciliar Radio.
Okay.
Yeah, it has like 8 followers. So if anyone would like to follow me and subscribe, that'd be great. I started it today. So
yeah. Okay. So all right. So if you have any questions about what we talked about, or if you want to go into more detail, or you want to suggest another study to go over, please leave it down in the comments section. I will be throwing up Ryan's link to his YouTube in the description, so that's where you'll see it. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.